So we have a great agenda and I think a really great presentation for everyone today that I'm really excited to share. And we have a fantastic group of people that we worked really hard alongside with in Santa Cruz to really dig into some of these issues today. So I kind of put this picture up as a joke, but it is turning into a reality that we all are not sitting around a circle in a garden, sitting on stumps and able to raise our hands and have a dialogue with each other. But we do have some technology here that you can ask questions with and also chat. So I encourage folks to use that throughout this presentation. So we're going to go through really two buckets of information here. We have some good nuggets of information to share around financial stability for school garden programs, and some great case studies to really bring to life how it's happening in the field. And then we're going to switch gears and talk about programmatic stability, and then along the same line, some great case studies. And then we'll have some time for question and answers at the end. So in terms of financial stability, I think I may have skipped. Oh, I did. These are our wonderful presenters, by the way. So we have Melina, Jess, Shannon, Amanda, Moses, and myself, who will all be sharing some stuff with you guys today. So to start off, financial stability. So this is a really broad topic, obviously, and we wanted to choose some specific things to share with folks that really resonated with us as we worked on this presentation. So Jess, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So do you want to skip to the next slide, I believe? We'll kind of give some notes about what I'm talking about. But basically what we wanted to talk about is some of the key factors in creating a financially stable school garden support organization. So really one of those key factors is maintaining diverse funding sources. So this is that idea that everyone out there is probably familiar with. You can't really put all your eggs in one basket. You know, we really know that the funding climate can change really quickly, and so having a firm grounding in a variety of funding strategies allows you to be more flexible as an organization and more resilient to those changes. So there are, a few school garden support organizations that might have a really stable one funding stream, like a foundation or a benefactor, but most of us really operate kind of as nonprofits. And for those nonprofits, we often think about kind of what I am kind of calling like the big three funding streams that we consistently come back to, which are grants, foundations, and donations. And the donations can be both on individual and corporate levels. So there's lots of ways that we try to seek those different sources, but those are often the three that we turn to. And for these three, there's lots of nonprofits out there depending on these sources, and there's lots of resources on the web and classes you can take to improve strategies in these areas of grants, foundations, and donations. So we're actually not going to spend a lot of time on the nitty-gritty of those areas. We'll talk a little bit as they apply to school gardens, but we're not going to dive too far into those. What we did want to actually sort of focus on a bit more is to call out a couple of newer potential funding sources for school gardens that are a little less ubiquitous, but have a lot of potential. So that's really looking at city and state funding. So that often is in the form of legislation, a soda tax, some of these new ideas that are coming out that are really exciting, and we'll talk about a couple case studies with that legislative support. And then we also want to talk about seeking funding from a district or a school that you serve, and really finding ways to have the school and the district create a budget line item that can support the school garden. So both of these areas have a huge potential to add to those like initial big three that I was talking about, the grants, the foundations, and the donations. If we can add support from a city or state level, and then also potentially from a school or district level, we would argue that kind of without those next two levels, it's really hard to get to a place that feels stable, because the grant landscape can be such a boom and bust kind of experience that it's really important to try and push towards these new areas. And it really, the other piece of that is finding a way to get either city or state support and school or district support also creates a sense of shared investment in your programming and deepens the potential for that budget consistency because you'll have that shared investment. And so I know it's maybe hard. I'm hoping it's easy enough to follow without the visual of the slides, but I'm going to keep going a little bit further, and feel free, either any of our organizers, to let me know if I should slow down or wait for the slides. So anyway, so I'm talking about the kind of big three funding streams and then the other sort of two newer funding streams. And in all of that, one of the things we did want to point out, and this is true for all nonprofits, but is really the idea that, that when we are trying to seek funding, great, thanks. We're a couple slides back from there right now. I think we're on slide number 4. Yeah, great. Okay, so here we have it. The big three, as I was saying, is sort of the new frontier of these two new funding areas. And so then I'm just wanted to mention this reflection over to the right. In any of these areas where we're seeking funding, really a big question to ask ourselves as school garden support organizations is, do we have the tools that we need to tell our story well to convince these different areas that they should invest in what we're doing? And so just reflecting on what audio and visual resources do you have, and really can we invite potential supporters into the garden for that hands-on experience of our work? So, as school support organization or garden support organizations, we really talk about having our kids have hands-on experiences, but how can we make sure that the people who are asking to support this work are also having hands-on experiences? And that image above there shows an example of, supporters. I believe this is a football team supporting a school garden organization. So trying to think about who can we give those experiences to folks and tell our story well, and also just, is our board supporting us enough as nonprofits to create these networks of support? All right, so the next slide. I said we weren't going to talk too much about grants, but I did want to just mention that there are some great resources out there for lists of grants and grant cycles that are specific to school gardens and garden programs. So here, these are links to a few of the ones that we found to be the most comprehensive. And actually, if there's anyone in the audience who has other great resources for this, we'd love for you to share it out with the group. But definitely, there's grants out there specific for this work. And then on our next slide, we did want to talk a little bit more about investment at the school and district level. So really in terms of making that leap to having schools and districts support our school garden work, there were two key things we wanted to highlight. The first is this idea of making sure that your garden program aligns with existing school goals and that you're effective at communicating that to the school. So we all know that schools don't have extra money to spend, so they need to understand how every program that they are potentially going to invest in helps them reach their existing goals. And there's a list up here of some ways that you can sort of speak about your program and the way it impacts academic outcomes, social emotional growth and outcomes, health and wellness goals, school and community pride, parent and community engagement, teacher retention. Well, we're so lucky as organizations that support school gardens, they can support a really wide variety of goals that the school's already meeting. And so it's important to think about what is your program actually supporting and how do you communicate that to the stakeholders that you're trying to get to invest in your program. And really providing data to demonstrate that it does that you're not just sort of saying that, oh yeah, of course it supports academic goals, but really providing evidence that it does support these things. And I put two links in here from the Life Lab page and also this pretty comprehensive literature review that provides really great peer-reviewed journal articles about the value and the impact of these. The second thing we wanted to call out is this idea of really also helping the schools and districts see that when they provide in-kind support, that counts as really valuable support for the school garden program and helps them see themselves as an invested party, even if they're not yet able to put a line item in their budget just for school garden. So if they're giving you staff time to train staff members, if their facilities, the facility staff is helping to support the garden, the custodial staff, et cetera, if they're helping you write grants, really helping them see that that is already a step towards supporting the school gardens. And you can even put a dollar amount by that work to help them see that they actually are putting money towards this already, and that can help them sort of re-visualize the way they see themselves as supporters of the school garden. And then finally, it's really helpful to provide models and examples to school leaders, district leaders, about the fact that this is already happening at other places around the country. So on this next slide, we have a list of various ways that schools and districts have found funding in their budgets for school gardens. And this is the idea that, you know, different schools are going to solve this problem in different ways. They can move their budget around in some ways and sometimes not in others. And so there's examples of schools that have found funding in their budget through all these different ways on the left, and then the district budget on the right to really support these school gardens. And providing those as examples can help a principal see that, oh right, I didn't think I could take it out of my activities budget, but maybe I could see if an elective teacher could also help teaching in the garden, etc. And with that, I think I'm going to hand it off to Amanda.
Sam, we actually, Tristana, can you put up a poll? We should have a poll, but you all can see the question there, so maybe just think about your answer before it comes up. Everyone should see the poll now. I see some answers coming in. We'll give another minute. Okay, great. Looks like we have a pretty tight race between securing diverse funding sources and school investment in terms of the biggest challenges. Oh, school investments just nudged ahead one. All right. So we're going to move on now to some case studies around financial stability. I'm going to talk about a case study. We're going to talk about a case study kind of at a larger scale with a state, and then we're going to talk about a medium scale case study at a district and regional level, and then we'll talk about a smaller case study at a CBO, smaller geographical area, so you get a sense of the different sizes and how it works. So here in Washington, D.C., we have a really great piece of legislation called the D.C. Healthy Schools Act, and it's pretty exciting in that it was legislation that was passed back in 2010 through the grassroots efforts of multiple community-based organizations and students and community members that really were concerned about what students were doing during the school day in schools and the environment that they were in. And so there was also a really receptive and forward-thinking council member who pushed the bill through, and it passed in 2010. So the first thing that I want folks to know is that this is a sugar-sweetened beverage tax, which is the funding mechanism that allows us to do our school garden work, as well as a wide variety of work in providing schools with healthy programming and creating these healthier school environments. So when we talk about the DC Healthy Schools Act, it's, for me, the most exciting part is that it's about school gardens, but really school gardens are a small part of this act as a whole. This legislation provides $4.2 million annually to support healthy school initiatives. So this ranges from physical education to composting and recycling, to farm to school activities, and also for National School Lunch Program meal reimbursements for serving local food. So of that 4.2 million, 500,000 of that goes to supporting school gardens. So with that money, we award grants. We award about $400,000 in grants annually. So over the past 5 years, this has allowed us to fund about 63 programs. And the focus of our funding is around staffing. So many of you know that staffing garden programs is a big challenge and difficult to find funding for. So we see that as a priority for our school garden grant. So one last thing that I wanted to share with folks about this piece of legislation, because I get questions about this a lot, is how do we get our own Healthy Schools Act in our region or state or county or district? And I've been working on my answer to this question, and it's becoming maybe a slightly more refined. But the one thing that I would say is that the success that we had with this legislation was because of all the partner organizations that really came together to have a voice and targeted around a specific issue, which was healthier schools. I see, I noticed that legislation that tries to get passed when it's too specific, like when it's just school gardens or even just farm to school, sometimes I find that it might benefit from being more inclusive of the whole school environment. So that's just something to consider. I've also seen that with our growing network of community-based organizations providing support to school gardens, we've been able to leverage that network for additional funds from the state or other foundations. So that's just something to consider as well. Obviously, we're not the only ones with legislation around school gardens and healthy school environments. Here are a few examples. There are probably many more, but just wanted to recognize that there's different ways of doing this and different avenues for the funding. Jess, do you want to take it from here? I think you're up next.
All right, so we also wanted to mention that there are a couple other models, and one of the ones we want to highlight is this idea of corporate giving, and really that, this comes in sort of the category of donations. We've got individual and corporate donations, and we've spoken with many school garden support organizations that have really highlighted how important it's been for them to find corporate giving as an option. And it's really an area that a lot of folks have not delved into as much, so we want to highlight and encourage folks to seek corporate support. A few of the organizations that have some significant corporate support in their model include both the national organizations, Real School Gardens and Food Corps, and then also a Las Vegas-based organization called Create a Change Now, who was part of our meeting in December and really had found some strong corporate support models. And some of the keys to success are similar to others, that we have to be able to tell a compelling story, and then also consider how we align with the mission of the corporation that we're seeking support from. And then also thinking about how can we provide various entrance points. So what does it look like to support with $1,000 up to $20,000, and what would different corporate entities find appealing about those different levels for to support your organization. And on the next slide, we wanted to speak a little bit more to models for school and district support and give you some examples of other entities you can look into that have found a lot of success in this. The first is City Sprouts, based in Cambridge and Boston, and they have gotten both the districts and the schools themselves to put a line item in their budgets to support school gardens. Real School Gardens, which is again national but has a really great partnership with the Fort Worth Independent School District. Mill City Grows in Massachusetts has a partnership with the Lowell Public School District where they have a funding line item for them, in San Francisco as well. And then I believe Moses will be speaking a little bit later about a partnership based out of the University of Arizona that has also shown a really great example of how to kind of create that school and district support.
Great, thanks, Jess. So we just wanted to highlight a few keys to success, and it's nothing to, nothing that's probably going to blow anybody's mind, and probably these are things that everybody is already doing, but oftentimes maybe we just get lost in the day-to-day shuffle. I really wanted to highlight this piece about evidence-based programming because I find this especially helpful when justifying the work and advocating for especially school leaders to prioritize this work when they're already up against so many other challenges and tight budgets. So as much as your program can be based in evidence and any way to show like research or even stories from educators and students that this is a valuable program is obviously going to help you. Also, this piece around long-term relationship building, I think for me one thing that is frustrating is that when a school comes on board and they're really excited, or sorry, let me rephrase that. When a school comes on board and they aren't showing the same ownership and buy-in that you were hoping for, just really thinking that it is a long-term relationship and that often success isn't going to be seen for a couple of years. I think we have another poll to share. So if folks can answer the question on the poll, I'll leave it open for a minute. All right, I see that dedicated staffing is overwhelmingly the biggest challenge, and we see that same thing here in DC, which is why we focus 4/5 of our funding on staffing. Okay, I'm going to hand it over now to Melina, who's going to talk more about some different elements of program stability. Melina, are you ready to go? Are you there?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I hope so. I think I've been unmuted. Well, according to that poll, we're all in agreement that it's really important to have dedicated staff for your garden program, and it's also one of our big challenges. So the programmatic stability elements that we're going to talk about are very much tied to the financial stability elements that Sam and Jess just shared. And dedicated staff is really important programmatically for a solid and sustainable garden program at your school. And that is something that we all agree on. And I want to talk a little bit about different ways that people are finding and securing dedicated staff for their school garden program. And I'm sure there's more that we can all be creative and find ways to dedicate staff to support our school gardens. But One way that some schools and organizations are finding to support, to provide that dedicated staff is the school itself can allocate funds or fundraise and find a way to hire a garden educator, a school-based staff person who is solely responsible for their school garden. I don't think this is as common as all of us would like, but it does exist. And another way is that within your school, you might find a way to give release time to an existing teacher or add to a part-time position that's already at your school and allow them to dedicate some time to the school garden. So you might have a part-time reading specialist that has an interest in the garden that can expand what they're doing at the school by providing some dedicated staff time to the garden, or a teacher who is able to dedicate some of his or her time to serving in the garden. Some districts and schools have wellness coordinators, already dedicated staff that are working towards overall school wellness, and within that position or department you might find some dedicated staff time to support the garden. Another model that we've heard about is creating a regular substitute model. So if there's a teacher who's excited about supporting the garden and teaching in the garden, that teacher might be released by a substitute teacher to work in the garden with any class that's interested, say once a week for the school year. So the staffing can come from within the school that way, or it can come via a partner organization, like many of us probably here on this webinar are school garden support organizations, and a lot of times we find that it's beneficial to partner with schools and provide that dedicated staff. So an employee of a school garden support organization can serve a school in that capacity, and usually there's some sort of cost share between the school and the nonprofit organization providing that dedicated staff, and they can come to an agreement about whether it's once a week or more frequently that that staff is supporting the school garden program. Some other ways of finding dedicated staff is by providing dedicated professional development time for their teachers. So teachers get set aside time to pursue professional development and prepare for using the garden for learning, and then that can then play out as them using more of their dedicated classroom time out in the garden to teach lessons. So we can go to the next slide. Another element of programmatic sustainability that we discussed is also really related to some of the funding conversation that came earlier on in this webinar. Is when you think about sustaining a program, it's helpful to think about it as a system, and an element in a system is most important and valued if it serves multiple purposes and it meets, solves multiple problems and meets multiple goals. So if you're looking for your school garden program to be sustainable, you want to make sure you have a clear understanding of all the stakeholders that might find value in the garden and help make those connections with all the possible individuals and organizations within and outside the school or district that you're serving to help everyone find a way that their goals are met through the garden and help making those connections. And the garden is valued by a wide network of stakeholders. It's more likely to not disappear or go untended. So Jess talked about some of those connections that you can make. You can connect it to academic standards, as we all know. You can connect it to life skills, social emotional health, wellness and nutrition, increases in attendance and sense of community at the school. So different stakeholders throughout the school community can find value in the school garden for many different reasons, and helping identify those will help make your program more sustainable. And I think it's Shannon is up next.
And this is Sam Ulery. Shannon, before you start on your slide, Tristana from Hope Kids Foundation has made an excellent suggestion, and I imagine this has probably come from our audience members. Can we, when we start talking, can we state our full name and the organization that we're affiliated with? And also on the last slide of this presentation, there is also everybody's name and email contact as well. So people will have a chance to get that information at the end.
Well, good afternoon. I am Shannon Carroll, and I work with the Let Us Learn program in North Carolina. And even if we have all these elements of financial and programmatic stability that we've discussed so far, it seems that we've all found that there's even another layer of support that is needed through partnerships and community engagement, which are all a part of what we've been talking about so far as well. So we thought it would be helpful to just provide some examples where partnerships and community engagement, seem to be working well in some of the gardens and school gardens across the country. So these examples, and you'll have these links, are ranging from one here in my hometown that is a situation with a small university class working with one preschool garden, all the way up to the one that Moses will be talking about later, where in Tucson you have a larger group of university students every semester working with, I believe, up to 17 different school gardens. And in between those two examples, there are situations where cities and different towns, counties, where you've got folks that are they enjoy gardening, they want to volunteer. So whether it be like the Urban Ag Ambassador Program in Somerville, or Master Gardener programs all across the country, that those are ways that you can, get some additional help in the school garden. So I'm just going to do, I think we're going to do a poll here in a second, but then I'll do just a quick overview of the first three, and then some other folks are going to go into more detail on the last two, the Bethel School District Farm and the one that's mentioned, been mentioned several times in Tucson. So Sam, I think we can go to the poll now, I believe.
Yeah, I jumped the gun on the poll. We already did this poll earlier, so we're going to keep the Shannon show going straight through the poll into the next section.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was the same one. But the next thing that I wanted to just mention, again, is just to highlight very quickly, because I know we want to save some time for questions, but the hen garden here in Boone. So Sam, if you can go on to the next slide, I think there's some info about it. Yes, right there. So this is just a situation, again, as I mentioned earlier, where you have one school garden that's a part of our Let Us Learn program here at a preschool, and a group of nutrition students at the university really are learning right alongside the preschoolers in terms of their gardening skills and healthy eating habits. So there's some links there about some things that they are doing, and then some additional support that Let Us Learn and Blue Ridge Women in Ag, which is a nonprofit in our community, provides to this particular garden and several other school and community gardens. So just an example on the small scale in terms of how both the university and nonprofit is working together to support the gardens in our area. And then the next example, as I mentioned earlier, in Somerville, this is a program where you've got folks that are already, gardeners. They have some skills, but maybe they want to expand those skills. So the city of Somerville sponsors this, provides training, additional training for these gardeners through the Green City Growers, which is a B corporation, a benefits corporation. And then in exchange for that training, these gardeners provide 30 hours of community volunteer service, helping out in school gardens. And you can see the list there of things that they receive training about. I believe that happens on several Saturdays, 4 different Saturdays, and then they have some work days in addition to those training days. And they then go out and volunteer for 30 hours, which can make a huge difference in terms of what can happen and how well a school garden can be maintained and be available to students in a school and teachers in a school. So that's an example of a city providing some support. And then the third example on the next slide is just really kind of pointing to a document, a brief that is provided by the Wisconsin School Garden Initiative that was just, it gives great examples of how you can create sort of a win-win situation with master gardeners and school gardens, and what those master gardeners can offer the schools, and then some tips for coordinating that so that, you know, it becomes a reliable source of volunteer help, and then what motivates those master gardeners, and just how to make this be a good match. So I know in my community we have master gardeners, and they've already begun to help with our school gardens, and it certainly can be a great resource for school gardens. And then that's just a quick overview of 3 possibilities for you to maybe look into further. And Sam, I think we'll move on then to the next example where we'll go into more detail.
Great. Thank you. That was great. And unfortunately, Amanda, who is a part of the Gardeneers in Chicago, we're having some technical difficulties getting her on. Amanda, I know you're listening. I hope I do you proud.
I'm
with
right
this.
here.
There you are. Oh, I'm so happy to hear your voice. Okay, go ahead.
I'm right here. I'm Amanda Fieldman. I work with Gardeneers in Chicago, and what we implement ongoing garden programming at 25 Chicago schools. And so I think that what has been a huge asset of our program is that we are very, very flexible based on the needs of our partner schools. So there are some schools that we work with where we're working with schools as many as 3 times per week. And also we work with schools 1 time a week. So we offer a menu of program options to our schools, and we're very, very flexible based on the needs of the school, which has been a huge asset. Like Jess was saying, it's been really helpful to have very clearly defined goals and have standards that are Common Core aligned, Next Generation Science Standard aligned, and that's very effective in increasing the buy-in of principals, of teachers, and community. And yeah, and something that's been also very effective for us is engaging community members. So getting parents involved, getting neighbors involved, and having the overall community surrounding the school be aware that there is a school garden space that can act as a gathering space for community members. And just to kind of talk more a little bit about our model, I know that Melina talked about dedicated staff and how critical that is. And for us, the way that we implement programming is that we have 2 dedicated staff members that are working hands-on in the garden with students at least once per week. And I think that has really made the difference in the success of our programs, rather than relying on volunteers or parents or teachers that might be, you know, spread really thin. We have staff members that are going to a network of different schools implementing these programs alongside of students. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, did you want to elaborate on the second slide, or did you get everything you wanted to?
I think I went through those a bit, yeah.
Okay. Melina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Barker. I spoke to you earlier without introducing myself. I'm the program director for Rogue Valley Farm to School, serving Southern Oregon, Jackson and Josephine counties. And I wanted to share with you just a different, another model that I had the opportunity to visit here in Oregon, the Bethel School District up in Eugene, Oregon, is a pretty unusual and special school district in terms of school garden programming. They have recently established a district farm on school district property, and it's right kind of on the grounds of one of their high schools and adjacent to one of their elementary schools. So the district superintendent, some principals, and the facilities director have all really prioritized garden programming, and the 4-acre farm really grew out of a small school garden that initially started a ways back. And so the 4-acre farm grows food for the school cafeteria. They focus on 4 main crops that serve students, and the high school students are highly engaged in growing the farm and participating in the greenhouse production, and they built a barn. And one way that they're able to do all of that is through a partnership with the Oregon Youth Conservation Corps, so the students can get summer employment and employment through the school year working on these projects around the district farm. And I was just really impressed when I went to visit, when we talk about the challenges around dedicated staff. This has a paid farmer, a district employee who's the farmer, another district employee who is a nutrition educator and cooking instructor. So they have found funding on a district level and through their food services budget to support this program. And then they're also engaging the younger students through field trips to their district farm. So it's an inspiring case study for us all, I think.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Moses, can you talk about what you're doing in Arizona, and also remember to tell us your full name and where you work?
So Moses, this is John. You'll have to unmute yourself, it looks like, under the staff panel.
Moses, I unmuted you. You should be good to go.
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. So I'm Moses Thompson. I'm here in Tucson, Arizona, and I work for the Tucson Unified School District and the University of Arizona. I want to highlight this partnership because I think that it's a good case study in programmatic sustainability, and that sustainability comes through both of these big institutions, the Tucson Unified School District and the University of Arizona, adopting our programs is their programs, and as they have adopted our programs as their programs, dedicated staff have come with that. And so the first example is my position. So I am joint funded by both the U of A and TUSD, and the purpose of my position is to serve as a conduit for U of A students to engage in a meaningful way within TUSD, specifically through school gardens. And then on the TUSD side, I'm able to provide professional development. We've set up a network amongst a couple dozen schools, and we've done curriculum development, site design, technical support. So that's my position. Another key element to the partnership is a class that's offered at the U of A, a school garden class. And what that class does is it provides 50 to 60 U of A students per semester in about 17 schools to be a consistent workforce for those school garden programs. In the class, the students have to do an hour and a half per week of training, and then they're placed into those schools. And then the last thing I was going to touch on is the professional development that we've done. Earlier this year, we went to the Tucson Unified School District. We did a little bit of homework as far as looking at what was their professional development model, what were their professional development goals, and then we were able to package the school gardening professional development that we wanted to do kind of in their own language and have them adopt that into their own professional development model, where teachers can do RPD on the clock and get continuing ed credit to do it. So next slide. So going back to the class a little bit more in depth, the class started as just an independent study. We had a single student go to a faculty member and saying, hey, I want to support a local school garden. Can you be my supervisor on this, and can you sign off so I can do this independent study? And then it grew to a couple students and then a few students. But we've now been able to institutionalize this class and get it cross-listed across a number of programs. I believe 11 different colleges across U of A have our class cross-listed. And so with this class comes a funded UA faculty member that teaches the class. It also comes with 2 teaching assistants that we utilize as field coordinators. So as we broadcast these 50 students out into our network of school gardens, we have a couple of funded graduate students that can go out and they can observe and give feedback and meet with our co-teachers and make sure that we're meeting the needs of the teachers that we support. During the 1.5 hours of class time that the students do at the university, we train them in kind of drylands gardening and permaculture in the Southwest. We teach them kid management in the garden. We do a lot of curricular integration. Over the years, we've had our co-teachers in the district write school garden curriculum that's tied to state standards and ties to next-gen science standards. And so we teach the students how to develop small group activities, short activities that parallel what the teachers are teaching in the classroom. And then the last piece is food justice. This class is housed in the School of Geography and Development, and the interest that the U of A School of Geography and Development has in our program is this food justice piece. So the whole program has kind of this strong food justice flavor to it. Next slide. And then the last slide is the professional learning communities, the professional development model that we've adopted. And so 2 years ago, the Tucson Unified School District decided to put an emphasis on this, on the PLC model at the site level within schools where teachers were able to self-select either at grade levels or curriculum types and develop their own professional learning communities where they could set their own goals, monitor their own progress, and meet regularly to drive instruction forward. And so learning about that and kind of digging deep into what the district wanted to do with PLCs, we were able to develop our own PLC model. We reached out to a private foundation, and we've been able to get funding for our PLCs for the past 3 years to do this. We have 2 cohorts, and so we've got an elementary school cohort of about 25 teachers, and then we have a middle high school cohort of another 25 teachers, and we meet with them once a month to do this professional development. We do a little bit of weekend stuff. The foundation money allows us to pay the teachers out of contract time for the weekend stuff we do, but the bulk of what the teachers do happens during their paid contract time. And I think that's it.
Great. So we are about at the end. I think we maybe have time for 1 or 2 questions. Whitney, do you have, I know I saw the questions that folks have been posting. Is there 1 or 2 that you would like, that you think kind of are broad enough, or we could answer in a minute or 2?
Well, this is John, and I'm going to pose some questions for folks. I'm going to put up this first question here, and Sam, I'll let you answer it, or presenters, if they want to unmute themselves and jump on. So someone asked a really interesting question about if folks have received contracts from districts or other educational institutions to run school garden programs. And I guess I'll start out by answering that. I have seen this done through school food service, where the school food service department will hire nutrition educator staff, garden staff, or even farm staff to help support school gardens and or run educational programming. So I'll end it there, but I do see a lot of movement in school food service in terms of contracting or hiring folks to do this work. So Sam,
Great.
you want to add to this?
Any other presenters? I'm going to punt to anyone else. Anyone else have an answer?
Hi, this is Whitney, and at Mount Diablo Unified School District here in California, the science department of the district contracts with a nonprofit called Sequoia Science Education to provide garden-based science education for their classes.
This is Moses in Tucson. Our Tucson Unified School District Food Services Department has hired a garden to cafeteria chef for us, and she also has brought on a full-time grant writer for us.
John, do we have time for one more?
Yeah, I was wondering if anyone, okay, great. Well, this one's actually, I'm going to put out to Moses here. And the question was, are the classes where you have your students involved, are they open to anyone as an elective, or are they specific to a particular department that you've partnered with?
And is the question in response to the U of A class?
Correct.
Yeah, so the U of A class, like I was saying, it's offered through the School of Geography, but it's cross-listed across 11 other colleges. And so people can take the course for course credit from the College of Education, from the School of Business. We're cross-listed through a lot of the like kind of ecology, sustainability stuff. And so there's about 11 different options that somebody can take our course and receive credit for.
Wonderful. Thank you, Moses. So I'm going to end out the webinar. We've come to an hour, and this is John Fisher from LifeLab. So I'm going to attempt to get my screen to be shared with you all. And folks can tell me if that is working.
Yes.
Ah, wonderful. So I do want to let folks know that the dialogue on this topic will be continued various ways. One, will be a recording of this webinar posted to our school garden group, or our National School Garden Network group. We also have a summary doc called the Best Practices document that Sam and his team have put together, and I'll be posting that in the next 10 minutes or so to our forum, which summarizes the webinar topics that we discussed in a print format. And since it is an online forum, folks are encouraged to continue to share their questions and dialogue. This forum has been going on for many, many years now. We've been about 5 years going, so there's much to search. You know, it's not like the most easy website to navigate, but post your question out there, and folks that have been on the forum longer than others will come in and chime in and direct you in the right direction to find the resources that you might be looking for. Additionally, we do have future webinars. If you go to nationalschoolgardennetwork.org and click on the webinar tab, you could sign up for our upcoming webinar, which is going to be on maintaining multiple school gardens. That's going to be Tuesday, May 9th at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And then we'll have one more before the school year's out, which is on measuring impact and how school garden support organizations work to assess what they do, and we'll share lots of different tools and methods that we do to assess the work that we do. And then we'll come back again in the fall and share some models of how organizations like ourselves train others, and garden educators being a broad term, from teachers to parent volunteers to garden coordinators. And then we'll finish up our series with school garden networking and what is the power and purpose of school garden networks. And last but not least, there will be a evaluation slide, or excuse me, an evaluation link that's going to be sent to you. And we'd love to hear your feedback about the content and how this webinar went. This was the first of these 5 that we'll be sharing. We are working at our kinks, and I thank you for our patience as we worked out our kinks, but it was a complicated task to share many, many presenters, and hopefully you gained some great insight hearing from different perspectives across the nation in terms of school garden support organizations. Thanks a lot. Once again, look for an archive of this at the nationalschoolgardennetwork.org's forum and engage with us on the forum. Thanks for joining us.